Recording.
Oh my god, he's drinking water.
Yeah, I heard him this morning.
He's alive. I've never seen him out and active. We're Jesus Christ, talking about the hedgehog.
As soon as he notices you, he's gonna freak out and hide again.
Well, he wasn't hiding these past few days. He was hibernating.
Nah.
He was.
Extreme hiding.
God, he's running over here. Hi, buddy. Okay, are you ready? Ew. Hey, book girlies. I'm Sarah.
Hey, gamer guys. It's Ian.
And if you are listening to this right now, do you have things to do today? Because if the answer to that is yes, don't listen to this episode. If you're listening to this at the start of your day, don't. It's going to wreck your whole day. And if you don't have anything to do today, or if it's at the end of the day and you feel like you really want to cry, this is maybe the episode for you. And you're listening to a pod of sass and sarcasm.
I'm trying to remember what the last thing I told you was.
Why are you playing the same game?
I don't know. What was the last thing I told you?
You think I remember that?
Oh.
Honestly, I don't know because I've been editing episodes. I've been hearing you play actual video games. We've recorded Patreon specials that are different and stuff, and you sometimes talk about things on there. I don't know. Were you not just playing something today?
No, I wasn't. I was just kind of just sitting in there watching stuff.
Weirdo. Were you watching people play video games?
No.
Damn it.
But recently, I've been playing Lord of the Rings, Return to Moria.
You did talk about that last time, yes.
Oh, okay.
You told me what it was about. I don't know if you really talked about like the mechanics of the game or anything though.
I might have. It's a generic survival builder type game, but it's more linear, meaning that it's not entirely open world. There's like a direction it's kind of pushing you.
So like you can't move forward until you do certain stuff. Can you like circumvent some of the tasks that you need to do?
The overall...
Can you stop for a second? I'm sorry, the hedgehog is making noise.
The hedgehog's moving around.
He has the zoomies.
What's he doing?
He's running on his poop wheel and shitting and now going for a snack and now going back for some agua. Yeah, hydrate or dihydrate, bitch. It's wheel time again. I think he just fell off the wheel. You're literally in your food dish. Don't you dare poop in there. Ew. He literally just sat in his food dish for a second and took a shit. You're disgusting. I'm sorry. For anyone who's considering getting a hedgehog, don't. They are a useless pet. He's so cute, though.
When you can actually see him.
Just be nocturnal like him. All right, he's fluffing himself up under his blanket, so he'll be good soon. And as long as he doesn't try to dig, because that's what makes the most noise is when he digs. All right, I don't think he's making much more noise. I'll let you know if he goes towards his wheel again.
I don't even remember what I was telling you.
I was asking if it's possible for you to circumvent tasks or if you have to do everything, like you have to, because you're saying it's like a linear thing. So is there any way to like go around and skip tasks and things like that? Or do you have to do A before you do B and then to get C you have to have done B and all that kind of stuff, and there's no way to get around that story? Because there's some games I know of that like the story can kind of unfold in multiple different ways.
Yeah, I think you're kind of free to explore to a certain extent, but you definitely do need to hit certain waypoints for things to continue. You can't knock down certain walls if you don't have the right pickaxe, and you don't get the right pickaxe if you don't go into the certain waypoints. But the waypoints are more like a guide towards pushing you further along the story. Eventually you'll get bored where you are, but the new thing I did was I played with one of my friends just to see what it was like. And it's a little bit easier because I may have joined his world with my character that already had a bunch of stuff and started him out further ahead. I was like, we're going to skip all this boring stuff. We're just going to go straight to this area.
Man, if only life was like that sometimes.
Oh, it's like that all the time. We're just not part of that.
What do you mean? I don't get to skip the boring stuff.
That's because you don't have enough money.
That's because we don't have enough Patreon donors. I'm kidding.
You're trying to kill me.
Maybe I am. Oh, man, I haven't gotten you good like that in a while.
I was making an inheritance joke.
Yeah, and I was making a joke out of that joke. Not really any particular kind of joke. I was just making a joke. So can I tell you some exciting news that you don't even know yet?
I suppose.
Well, not news. News is too strong of a word. Just kind of a funny, not ironic or whatever. I don't know what word I'm looking for here, but in our first couple of episodes for this season, anyways, the very first one was with Bree, and we had mentioned something in that episode about being like, I had said that I didn't want to offend our French listeners because I was like, I'm not doing a French accent for all of the characters that are French. Then I said, as if I have any French listeners, because like at the time I was looking at our analytics and we didn't have anybody in France. I haven't looked at them in a while, so we might now, but I don't know. And then I had mentioned that we had at least one listener in Canada. We have at least 3 now, but we had one at the time in Canada. And I was like, it could be a French Canadian and and so Bree and I had asked, we were like, hey, listener in Canada, do you speak French? Are you French Canadian? And guess who that listener is?
Isn't it the...
It's the author of our previous book.
Yeah.
She just commented on our Instagram post for episode 1 because that just came out a couple days ago at the time that we're recording this. See, this is where it gets really confusing being this far ahead. I don't like it. But anyway, she was like, it's me. I'm the Canadian listener. And yes, I do speak French. And I was like, hell yeah. And then now I'm like, oh no, because tomorrow the next episode comes out and you make a dig at French Canadians. She's not French Canadian. She did say that, but she was like, I am the Canadian and I do speak French. And I'm like, oh my God, hey, that's so cool.
That's hilarious.
It was a funny thing. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
So as I was telling you that it's like a more linear survival type game, I want to tell you a short experience I had. I found this broken staircase just in the middle of nowhere, just going down. And I was like, I'll just check that out real quick. I go down, and I go down, and I go down, and then I just get ambushed by a bunch of spiders.
Oh no. Are they normal sized spiders or are they like giant New Zealand spiders?
Bigger than New Zealand spiders.
Are they like the spiders in the second Harry Potter movie big?
Yes.
Oh no.
So I managed to kill all the spiders and I go, wow, that was pretty fun. And I bust through a wall and I go, oh, this is a cool area. There's all kinds of piles of gold everywhere. And a cave troll comes walking around a column. And I go, oh my God, that's so cool. And then I go, I wonder if I can take him.
He's not a pet, Ian.
Meaning, I wonder if I can kill him.
Oh.
Or beat him. Newsflash, I cannot.
Good. Put yourself in your place, man.
Slapped the crap out of me, you know?
I'm imagining those little slap fights that people do where like they just barely like touch each other's fingers and stuff. Is that what he did to you?
That's what he did to me, but I died. I tried to smack him with an axe and he just slapped me with an open palm and I died.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
So I was like, how am I going to take care of this guy?
You're not. He's going to take care of you.
Mm-hmm. So I ended up just sneaking around him.
I really needed that because I am feeling without sass and without sarcasm for this episode.
Are you ready to tear my heart out?
Yeah, we are getting up to a part of this book that I am not going to be in a very funny haha mood.
Okay.
So we are continuing to read The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah, and things have been getting pretty dark and heavy. The story follows 2 sisters, Vianne and Isabel, during World War II. Vianne is the older sister, and she's very cautious to disrupt any sense of order, even if she feels that whatever's happening is wrong. She tends to do as she's told and doesn't ask too many questions. She tends to trust authority almost blindly and hopes that other people make the hard decisions for her. Isabel, on the other hand, has always been described as impetuous. She says what's on her mind and has a strong sense of justice. Most of her life felt directionless and meaningless, but now that she's created the Nightingale escape route, she is passionately and and persistently working toward her goal of helping people. When the war initially broke out, Isabel was sent to live with her sister in Caraveau, but struggled to live civilly under the same roof as Captain Wolfgang Beck, a Nazi, who was requisitioned to stay in Vienne's home. When she joined the Free French movement, she was relocated to Paris, leaving Vienne and Sophie vulnerable and alone with Captain Beck. In Paris, Isabel was a courier for the underground, but quickly shifted gears and became a liaison and guide for downed airmen to smuggle themselves into Spain to then return home. Shortly after Isabel's departure, Vienne lost her teaching job and worried that she and Sophie might starve over the winter because of it. Captain Beck made a really weird advance on Vienne and then told her that Sophie would not starve. He assured her of that. Vienne is becoming reliant on Captain Beck. Beck has basically taken over the man of the house position and has made it his business to know what is going on with Vienne, seemingly beyond the scope of his duties. And that's about where we left off.
Mm-hmm.
So around this same time, we jump back to Isabel in Paris, who's continuing her work with the Nightingale escape route. If Isabel is the old woman, I think that this scene that I'm about to read is where we meet her future husband, because the old woman in the opening scene is on the Oregon coast.
No, I'm just smiling because I think I called it that she falls in love with an American pilot or Green Beret is what I said.
Yeah, we had known that this old woman was on the Oregon coast. That's not that big of a jump, like from...
Hey, give me my small victories here.
No. All right. So I think this is where we meet her husband. It's kind of funny and kind of adorable and much needed levity in this very heavy book. We know that the old woman is on the Oregon coast. And in this scene, she meets two downed airmen in one of the safe houses and interrogates them to make sure that they are who they say they are and all of that kind of stuff. And one of the airmen is named Ed Perkins from Bend, Oregon. So specifically from Oregon. So I'm like, okay, interesting. Apparently, Perkins is your typical American, very loud, doesn't listen. In the small room, lit only by a single candle, two men got to their feet, stood at attention. Both were dressed as French peasants in ill-fitting clothes. "Captain Ed Perkins, miss," the bigger of the two men said. "And this here lout is Ian Trufford or some such name. He's Welsh. I'm a Yank. We're both damned happy to see you. We've been going half mad in this small space." "Only half mad?" she asked. Water dripped from her hooded cloak and made a puddle around her feet. "Perkins, you say?" "Yes, miss." "From?" "Bend, Oregon, miss. My pa's a plumber and my mom makes the best apple pie in the 4 counties. "What's the weather like in Bend this time of year?" "What, in the middle of March?" "Cold, I guess. Not snowing anymore, maybe, but no sunshine yet." She bent her neck from side to side, massaging the pain in her shoulders. All this pedaling and lying and sleeping on the floor took a toll. She interrogated the two men until she was certain they were who they said they were. When she was finally convinced, she opened her rucksack and brought out supper, such as it was. The Yank, Perkins, talked almost constantly, while the Welshman chewed in silence. "You must have a husband somewhere who's worried about you," Perkins said as she closed her rucksack. She smiled. Already this had been a common question. "And you must have a wife who is waiting for word," she said. It was what she always said, a pointed reminder. "Nah," Perkins said, "not me."
Nah.
"Nah," Perkins said, "not me. A lug like me don't have girls lining up. And now... I know it's not exactly heroic to think about, but I could walk out of this boarded up house in this town I can't fucking pronounce and get shot by some guy I ain't got nothing against. I could try trying to bike across your hills," mountains, Isabel corrected. "I could get shot walking into Spain. Hell, I could probably fucking freeze to death on your damned hills." "Mountains," she said again, her gaze steady on his. "That's not going to happen."
I do think it's funny he keeps calling them hills because he's from Oregon, where there's also mountains.
Your fucking hills.
Them there hills.
The Welshman, Ian, made a sighing sound. "There, you see, Perkins? This slip of a girl is going to save us." He gave Isabel a tired smile. "I'm glad you're here, miss. This lad's been sending me round the bend with his chatter. You might as well let him talk. By this time tomorrow, it'll take all you have inside to keep breathing." "The hills?" Perkins asked, his eyes wide. "Oui," she said, smiling. "The hills. Americans. They didn't listen." I thought this scene was kind of funny, so cute. Makes me a little bit nervous, but cute. I think Perkins seems a little bit oafish, but kind of charming. And I love the love story between Gaetan and Isabel, but I don't think it can be sustained, whatever they have going on. And to be perfectly honest, I think one or both of them dies in this book. I'm getting more and more convinced that Isabel dies. I think she gets maybe too cocky at some point and gets caught. Or something. Like, I think there's going to be some kind of thing where, which is why I'm also starting to question whether or not she's the old woman, is because if she dies, and she obviously can't be the old woman, the thing that makes me not really think that the old woman is Vienne is that the old woman has a son, and Vienne is pretty convinced that she can't have any more children. Rachel has a son named Ari, so it could be him. I don't really know, though. But then where does the American come in? That's the thing. It's like, because Rachel already has a husband.
Sometimes it's the simplest answer.
I mean, like, here's the thing. It could be Vienne as far as adoption is a thing. So she could have adopted a son. The other thing is, I have to remind myself that this woman, the old woman, helped people. And I don't know how much Rachel can help people right now because she is in such dire straits with what is going on.
Yeah.
Obviously. So it's like, I'm not saying she didn't help anybody, but if she's winning an award for helping people,
It's kind of hard to do when you're
when
one
you
of the
are
primary victims.
Exactly. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Maybe I think it's just that because I guessed it right away that it was Isabel. Like, Isabel has been my top guess this entire time. I'm starting to second guess myself and saying, like, maybe it's not her. I don't know. The reason that I think, though, that they introduced Perkins, because, like, why do that? Why not just say that she interrogates them? Like, they didn't even show most of her interrogation. So it's like, why introduce Perkins if he's not important? I think Perkins is the old woman's husband. Because the old woman talks about how her husband has died and stuff like that and blah, 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 blah. So I think somehow Isabel and Perkins get together, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it depends on how long this journey over the mountains takes. If they just kind of breeze through it again.
Well, we don't actually see them going over the mountains. We don't see her taking Perkins over the mountains is, I guess, what I meant to say there.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that, like, maybe Perkins doesn't come back. Since setting up her escape route 8 months prior, Isabel has helped 87 airmen cross the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain. She had set up safe houses in Paris as well as many of the surrounding cities and towns, including Caravo. So she had set up safe houses in Caravo, but she obviously never went to see Vienne those times that she had to visit Caravo.
But she can't anymore.
She can't, because that would raise way too many questions. But she, was feeling the sense of longing and wanting to see her sister and see how she is, but she obviously couldn't. Her contact at the British consulate, whose code name is Tuesday, which I love. I don't know why.
I was going to say, it makes you think of the Addams Family.
With Wednesday? Yeah. He's starting to get nervous for her. Obviously, the Nazis are looking for the Nightingale. They've heard of this, and they know that this escape route is called the Nightingale. Everyone knows that if she is ever caught, they are not going to show her any mercy. So this is why I suspect Isabel is going to die. I think there is going to be something happen where she gets caught. And so if Isabel's not the one to die, I think somebody close to her is going to die. So when she returns to Paris after her most recent successful crossing of the Pyrenees, other than she did lose one American who didn't listen to her because he didn't want to take orders from a girl. That was obviously not Perkins.
Yeah, he fell down the mountain and died.
Yeah, pretty much. She returns to Paris after this most recent successful crossing of the Pyrenees. And pretty much as soon as she got back, she was told by Anouk that the Nazis are planning something, but they don't know what it is. In Paris, she exited the train amid the crowd of drab-eyed, dark-clothed people who looked like they belong in an Edvard Munch painting. She heard someone yell, "Halt!" Whistles shrieked. People screamed. Several German soldiers, accompanied by French policemen, encircled a small group of people who immediately dropped to their knees and raised their arms. She saw yellow stars on their chests. Isabel slowed. Anouk appeared beside her, linking her arm through Isabel's. "Bonjour," Anouk said, in a voice so animated it alerted Isabel to the fact that they were being watched. Or, at least, Anouk worried that they were. "How was your latest holiday to the mountains?" "Unremarkable." Anouk leaned in close. "We hear word of something being planned. The Germans are recruiting women for clerical work on Sunday night. Double pay. All very secretive. Paul has gotten you a position. You start at 9. That night, Isabel walked across town to the prefecture of police. There was a hum in the pavement beneath her feet, the sound of vehicles moving somewhere close by, a lot of them. Although the windows were blacked out, the place was busy. There were German officers and French police milling about, going in and out of the building, which was an oddity at this late hour. In the courtyard was a long row of buses parked end to end. The drivers stood together in a huddle, smoking and talking. She kept her head down as she walked through a throng of men in French police uniforms. Just inside the building, she stopped. It was a huge space with a staircase on either side and office doors spaced every few feet. But tonight, it looked like a sweatshop, with hundreds of women seated at desks pressed together. Telephones rang nonstop, and French police officers moved in a rush. A bored-looking French police officer led her around the perimeter of the room. Desks were spaced so closely together that Isabel had to turn sideways to make her way down the narrow aisle to the empty desk he'd indicated. When she sat down and scooted close, she was elbow to elbow with the women on either side of her. The surface of her desk was covered with card boxes. She opened the first box and saw the stack of cards within. She pulled out the first one and stared at it. Sternholz, Isaac, 12 Avenue Rast, 4th District, clogmaker. It went on to list his wife and children. You are to separate the foreign-born Jews, said the French officer, who she hadn't noticed was still there. Pardon? She said, taking out another card. That box there, the empty one. Separate the Jews born in France from those born elsewhere. We are only interested in the foreign-born Jews. Men, women, and children. Why? They're Jews. Who cares? Now get to work. Isabel turned back around in her seat. She had hundreds of cards in front of her, and there were at least 100 women in this room. The sheer scale of this operation was impossible to comprehend. What could it possibly mean? How long have you been here? She asked the woman beside her. Days, the woman said, opening another box. My children weren't hungry last night for the first time in months. What are we doing? The woman shrugged. I've heard them saying something about Operation Spring Wind. What does it mean? I don't want to know. Isabel flipped through the cards in the box. One near the end stopped her. Levy, Paul. 61 Rue Blandine, Apartment C, 7th District, Professor of Literature. So if that name doesn't sound familiar, Paul Levy is one of the organizers of the underground network, the Free French movement that she's in. He's her father's best friend, the one who offered her father the position in the network to be the forger of papers and stuff like that. And he's basically like an uncle to Isabel. Mm-hmm. So she found his name and his address in this stack of cards.
So he's a Jew?
This is a list of all of the cards are Jewish. And he happens to be a foreign-born Jewish. He was not born in France.
Well, she can miss that one.
So she was very taken aback by seeing Paul's name. And so because of that, she kind of accidentally caused a little bit of scene because she jumped up really fast and she knocked over a box of cards. But then that was a nice cover for her to be able to slip his card up her sleeve. And then one of the French policemen came over to her and was like, what is this? What's going on? And she's like, I'm so sorry. I have the flu. I need to work, but I can't right now. I have to go. And then she started coughing kind of like in his face and he was like, fine, leave. And and she like coughed and was pretending to cough until she got to the end of the block where she just ran. She ran home. Again, this is where historical fiction, especially about World War II, becomes incredibly difficult because we know what's happening here.
Yeah, we know exactly what's going on.
But she doesn't. She keeps asking, what does this mean? What is this about?
Yeah, and we finally see the who cares? It's a Jew. And the woman going, I don't want to know.
And not only that, but the part that really got to me with this scene was the scale of it. It's like we can scream at the characters all we want because we know what's going on, but they don't. But there's, I thought I'd make it further in the podcast before crying publicly, but I keep thinking about that time that we went to Auschwitz, which, by the way, honestly, if you're ever in Krakow in Poland, it's worth the trip, quite honestly. It's it's a hard and harrowing experience, but there's really no way to wrap your brain around the scale of it and the magnitude of it, because she's saying there's hundreds of women in this room, and each woman has hundreds of cards sitting in front of her. So that's thousands, millions of people's names and addresses. And when we went to Auschwitz, they have a lot of ways to show you the magnitude there, because there was the room with the shoes.
And that was only half of them.
Yep. There's the room with the hair and like the dishes and like the weird little knickknacks and just like the things that made them people, and just like in these crazy huge piles that you just can't wrap your brain around. And there's that gigantic book of all the people who went through there. That book is taller than I am, and it's as long as a dinner table. And it's like dictionary thin paper, and they print it in the same way like a dictionary, where there's like multiple columns, and it's just the list of everybody's name. And then, as you were saying too, it's not just the size of the operation, you know, because it's one of those things where I'm like, how did nobody know? But it's like they were so secretive that even their own people didn't know what they were doing. They're like, we don't know why we're doing this. We just know that this is our order and we're following orders.
Yeah, you know? And then so much so they're like taking advantage of people like, who are also starving.
Because there's all the propaganda that's already been out there in the book, and there's all this stuff, the talk about like the executions that were happening. And there's like the scare tactics of making the French comply with what was going on, because they're like, this could be you if you do something wrong, quote unquote. And so people are scared and they don't know who to trust or what authority to listen to. And they know that some of this just feels wrong, but they don't know what kind of power they have or what they can do, or if they can even do anything about it. And then, like you said, they've been starving. Like the people, like everybody's been starving. Except for the Germans at this point.
Just the German soldiers were not starving. The regular German populace was also starving.
Right. Like there's that power and that control. And I think it's like there was obviously that strategy of like, you don't tell people why you want their names. You just say, yep, I want their names, you know, because I don't think those women would be there if they knew what this was, you know? And again, this is hard to read because of the hindsight of it.
Yeah, and what we've seen. And
what we know. But like being there, it's like, yeah, like I don't know if who would be able to figure out that that's what that meant? Like what all of this meant, you know? And then her saying like, yeah, for the first time in months, my kids weren't hungry. Like, that's really sad. And then her saying, I don't want to know, because if they knew, I don't think there would be many women that would be volunteering to help them out with this. So it's like, yeah, you don't tell them. And like, I can't imagine the amount of guilt that would go along with afterwards finding out that that's what that was for. And knowing that you played a part in that. Like, that's just, it's such a level of.
Yeah, just like.
Depravity, you know, like it's so, the manipulation of it and how that power dynamic plays out is so deep and twisted, and just that's what makes this really, really hard.
Yeah, because like think about how much would you do for twice the amount of money you normally get.
Right. And even though you know that this is in some way helping...
There's something wrong going on here.
And it's like, I know that earlier I had a hard time even just with like VN giving Beck that list of names.
Now you're sitting down and sorting for hours.
Yeah. This is why I do love historical fiction, but this is why I don't like World War II fiction specifically. It is just a very heavy topic.
Yeah, no matter where you're studying in the war, something horrendous is happening.
Yes. It's just such a heavy topic. And so it's like, I really can't read World War II stuff. And especially because I think everybody has some kind of personal connection to the war. It might not be the most direct connection, but like there's connections. And even if you don't have like those direct personal connections, you can still hopefully show some empathy and just trying to understand the humans and like the humanity that was just lost in this war. It's heavy. It's the reason why I am considering not finishing this book, not because it's not good, but I'm having a really hard time with it.
Which is understandable.
So, she pocketed the card and made a quick escape, running all the way to her father's apartment, where she was to report on what she saw in there so that the network could better prepare for the plan that they knew that the Nazis were brewing. What could it mean? Isabel peered past the blackout shade in the apartment, staring down at the avenue. Papa sat at the dinner table, nervously drumming his ink-stained fingers on the wood. It felt good to be here again, with him, after months away, but she was too agitated to relax and enjoy the homey feel of the place. You must be mistaken, Isabel, Papa said, on his second brandy since her return. You said there had to be tens of thousands of cards. That would be all the Jewish people in Paris. Surely, question what it means, Papa, but don't question the facts. The Germans are collecting the names and addresses of every foreign-born Jewish person in Paris. Men, women, and children. But why? Paul Levy is of Polish descent, sure, but he's lived here for decades. He fought for France in the Great War. His brother died for France. The Vichy government has assured us that veterans are protected from the Nazis. Vienne was asked for a list of names, Isabel said. She was asked to write down every Jewish, communist, and Freemason teacher at her school. Afterward, they were all fired. They can hardly fire them twice. He finished his drink and poured another. And it is the French police gathering the names. If it were the Germans, it would be different. Isabel had no answer to that. She saw a flash of silver outside. Lifting the shade a little higher, she stared down at the dark street. A row of buses rolled down the avenue, their painted headlamps off, looking like a slow-moving centipede that stretched for blocks. She had seen buses outside of the prefecture of police, dozens of them parked in the courtyard. Papa? Before she could finish, she heard footsteps coming up the stairs outside the apartment. A pamphlet of some kind slid into the apartment through the slit beneath the door. Papa left the table and bent to pick it up. He brought it to the table and set it down next to the candle. Isabel stood behind him. Papa looked up at her. It's a warning. It says the police are going to round up all of the foreign-born Jews and deport them to camps in Germany. We are talking when we need to be acting, Isabel said. We need to hide our friends in the building. It's so little, Papa said. His hand was shaking. It made her wonder, again, sharply, what he'd seen in the Great War, what he knew that she did not. It's what we can do, Isabel said. We can make some of them safe. At least for tonight. We'll know more tomorrow. Safe. And where would that be, Isabel? If the French police are doing this, we are lost. Isabel had no answer for that. Saying no more, they left the apartment. Stealth was difficult in a building as old as this one, and her father, moving in front of her, had never been light on his feet. Brandy made him even more unsteady as he led her down the narrow, twisting staircase to the apartment directly below theirs. He knocked on the door. He waited to the count of 10 and knocked again, harder this time. Very slowly, the door opened. Just a crack at first, and then all the way. Oh, Julian, it's you, said Ruth Friedman. She was wearing a man's coat over a floor-length nightgown with bare feet sticking out beneath. Her hair was in rollers and covered with a scarf. You've seen the pamphlet? I got one. Is it true? She whispered. I don't know, her father said. There are buses out front, and lorries have been rumbling past all night. We think you should bring your children to our place for now. We have a hiding place. But my husband is a prisoner of war. The Vichy government promises us that we will be protected. I am not sure we can trust the Vichy government, madam, Isabel said to the woman. Please, just hide for now. Ruth stood there a moment, her eyes widening. The yellow star on her overcoat was a stark reminder of the way the world had changed. Isabel saw when the woman decided. She turned on her heel and walked out of the room. Less than a minute later, she guided her 2 daughters toward the door. What do we bring? Nothing, Isabel said. She herded the Freemans up the stairs. When they reached the safety of the apartment, her father led them to the secret room in the back bedroom and closed the door on them. I'll get the Wisniaks, Isabel said. Don't put the armoire back in place yet. They're on the 3rd floor, Isabel. You'll never lock the front door behind me. Don't open it unless you hear my voice. Isabel, no! She was already gone, running down the stairs, barely touching the banister in her haste. When she was nearly to the 3rd floor landing, she heard voices below. They were coming up the stairs. She was too late. She crouched where she was, hidden by the elevator. 2 French policemen stepped onto the landing. The younger of the 2 knocked twice on the Wisniak's door, waited a second or two, and then kicked it open. Inside, a woman wailed. Isabel peered around the corner. Madame Wisniak was a beautiful woman, with skin the color of fresh cream and luxurious hair that never looked as messy as it did now. Her young son and daughter, whom she had pulled in close, were wide-eyed. Pack up your things, just the necessaries. You are being relocated, said the older policeman as he flipped through a list of names. Your children are French-born citizens, the policeman said. You may leave them here. They are not on my list. Isabel couldn't remain hidden. She got to her feet and descended the stairs to the landing. I'll take them for you, Lily, she said, trying to sound calm. The French policeman turned to her. "What is your name?" one of them asked Isabel. She froze. What name should she give? "Rossignol," she said at last, although without the corresponding papers, it was a dangerous choice. Still, Gervais might make them wonder why she was in the building at almost 3 a.m, putting her nose in her neighbor's business. The policeman consulted the list and then waved her away. "Go. You are no concern to me tonight." Isabel looked past them to Lily Wisniak. "I'll take the children, madame." Lily seemed not to comprehend. "You think I'll leave them behind?" "I think—" "Enough!" the older policeman yelled, thumping his rifle butt on the floor. "Get out," he said to Isabel. "This doesn't concern you." "Madam, please," Isabel pleaded. "I'll make sure they are safe." Lily frowned. "But we are safe with the French police. We've been assured. And a mother can't leave her children. Someday you'll understand." She turned her attention to her children. "Pack a few things." The French policeman at Isabel's side touched her arm gently. When she turned, he said, "Go." She saw the warning in his eyes, but couldn't tell if he wanted to scare her or protect her. Now, Isabel had no choice. If she stayed, if she demanded answers, sooner or later her name would be passed up to the prefecture of police, maybe even to the Germans. With what she and the network were doing with the escape route, and with what her father was doing with false papers, she didn't dare draw attention, not even for something as slight as demanding to know where a neighbor was being taken.
This is pretty heavy, but I do like that they kind of drew a parallel between her and her sister. That I wouldn't dare risk drawing attention. I wouldn't risk drawing attention because for Vienne, I wouldn't dare draw attention for my daughter. And for Isabel, I wouldn't dare draw attention for the cause.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't know if I even noticed that. It is interesting as I read on how both Isabel and Vienne, as they are maturing through this war, as they mature, they become more like each other. Like Isabel is becoming more like Vienne, considering the consequences and considering what's at stake if she draws attention. You know, a lot of the time she's used to having attention on her, but she needs to sometimes be invisible. And she's gotten very good at being invisible. But meanwhile, Vienne is now starting to see that she needs to have a voice and to have an opinion and to not let stuff happen just because it's easier than, you know, getting in trouble kind of stuff. So it is very interesting that the two of them are kind of becoming like each other. So the next day, Isabel walked past the Wisniak apartment and found it had been looted, with the door still open. She decided that she wanted answers. Where were those people being sent? Why? What did it mean? And what was the bigger picture? She closed the door behind her. In the lobby, she paused just long enough to compose herself, and then opened the door. Buses rolled down the street, one after another. Through the dirty bus windows, she saw dozens of children's faces, with their noses pressed to the glass, and their mothers seated beside them. The sidewalks were curiously empty. Isabel saw a French policeman standing at the corner, and she went to him. Where are they going? The sporting stadium. Why? You don't belong here. Go, or I'll put you on a bus and you'll end up with them. The policeman leaned in close, whispered, Go. He grabbed her arm and dragged her to the side of the road. Our orders are to shoot anyone who tries to escape. You hear me? You'd shoot them? Women and children? The young policeman looked miserable. Go. Isabel knew she should stay. That was the smart thing to do. But she could walk to the Veldiv almost as quickly as the buses could drive there. It was only a few blocks away. Maybe then she would know what was happening. For the first time in months, the barricades on the side streets of Paris were unmanned. She ducked around one and ran down the street toward the river, past the closed-up shops and empty cafes. Only a few blocks away, she came to a breathless stop across the street from the stadium. An endless stream of buses jammed with people drew up alongside a huge building and disgorged passengers. Then the doors wheezed shut and buses drove off again. Others drove up to take their place. She saw a sea of yellow stars. There were thousands of men, women, and children, looking confused and despairing, being herded into the stadium. Police patrolled the perimeter like American cowboys herding cattle, blowing whistles, shouting orders, forcing the Jewish people forward into the stadium or onto other buses. She saw a young French policeman and fought through the crowd to get to him. What's happening? She asked. That's not your concern, mademoiselle. Go. Isabel looked back at the large stadium. All she saw were people, bodies crammed together, families trying to hold on to each other. The police shouted at them, shoved them forward toward the stadium, yanked them to their feet when they fell. She could hear the children crying. A pregnant woman was on her knees, rocking back and forth, clutching her distended belly. But there are too many of them in there, Isabel said. They'll be deported soon. Where? He shrugged. I know nothing about it. You must know something. Work camps, he mumbled. in Germany. That's all I know. But they are women and children. He shrugged again. Do I look like the mastermind of this? I just do what I'm told. They tell me to arrest the foreign-born Jews in Paris, so I do it. They want the crowd separated, single men Drancy, families to Veldiv. Voila, it's done. Point rifles at them and be prepared to shoot. The government wants all of France's foreign Jews sent east to work camps, and we're starting here. All of France? Isabel felt the air rush out of her lungs. Operation Spring Wind.
It's almost too much.
It's one of those things where I have to recognize my privilege in the choice on whether or not to read this, because you saying oh, it's almost too much. I agree, as far as it's a lot and it is really hard to read and it is hard to wrap your brain around, but it happened. This isn't, there are people that didn't have a choice on whether or not they were living this experience, I'm also glad that Kristin Hannah was able to show the different levels of rebellion that were happening, because it would feel too hopeless if there were only some pieces of rebellion happening. But I love that Isabel is able to find, especially the young French policemen who are willing to give her the gentle, you need to get out of here. And then giving her information that she really shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. Because obviously there's what Isabel and the Underground Network are doing. And then there's the ones who have been blatantly disregarding the German authority and all of that kind of stuff. And they've been getting executed very publicly or imprisoned or some other things. But then there's, like I said, the moments like this where she's finding somebody who is reluctant to do their job. They're I'm following orders. I'm doing what I'm told. This is my job to do this, but I don't like it. Mm-hmm. And because I don't like it, I am going to let something out that I shouldn't let out. Because they are in control of information.
Yeah, what little they do have. But
right.
If you also think about it, they're still having to do this because the consequence would be what Vivienne is experiencing.
Vienne.
The consequence would be what Vienne is experiencing, which is starvation.
Exactly, yes. It's, again, making those choices of what is going to make sure that they survive themselves as individuals, but also, they are starting to piece together the puzzle and put the bigger picture together as well. And so while no individual person can really stop this, it is nice to see that there's all of those different levels of rebellion that are starting to also work together to put a stop to this. So now we know that people are being deported to Germany en masse, and we all do know what's coming next. So deep breaths, everybody. So then we switch back to Vienne in Caraveau. It's still in the summer of 1942. It's about a week after Sophie had her illness that Captain Beck offered some aspirin for her, I'm assuming. I don't know if it was aspirin, but it was some medication that Vienne previously didn't have access to. It's a warm summer day. Vienne and Sophie have been standing in ration lines all day, and then they are going to be walking home, but they decide to stop at Rachel's house. As they left the shop, Vienne kept Sophie close to her, tucked against her hip as if she were a much younger child. Vienne saw a group of soldiers coming their way, rifles glinting in the sunshine. They marched past, and tanks followed them, grumbling over the cobblestone street. "There's a lot going on out here today," Sophie said. Vienne had been thinking the same thing. The road was full of French police. Military police were coming into town in droves. It was a relief to step into Rachel's quiet, well-tended yard. She looked forward to her visits with Rachel so much. It was really the only time she felt like herself anymore. At Vienne's knock, Rachel peered out suspiciously, saw who was at the door, and smiled, opening the door wide, letting the sunshine stream into the bare house. "Vienne! Sophie, come in, come in!" Rachel's daughter Sarah hugged Sophie as if they've been apart for weeks instead of days, then took her by the hand and led her out into the front yard, where they sat beneath an apple tree. Rachel left the door open so that they could hear them. "I brought you something," Vienne said, withdrawing bread and cheese from her basket. "No, Vienne, we have talked about this," Rachel said. Before Vienne could answer, she heard a motorcycle out on the road. She recognized the sound of it and went to stand in the open doorway. Rachel squeezed in beside her. "What is he doing here?" "I'll see," Vienne said. She walked through the orchard, past a bird hovering at the roses, to the gate. Opening it, she stepped through, onto the roadside, let Rachel in behind her. Behind them, the gate made a little click, like the snapping of a bone. "Madames," Beck said, doffing his military cap, wedging it under his armpit. "I am sorry to disturb your lady's time, but I have come to tell you something, Madame Mauriac." He put the slightest emphasis on you, made it sound as if they shared secrets. Oh, and what is it, Herr Captain? Vienne asked. He glanced left to right, then leaned slightly toward Vienne. Madame de Champlain should not be home tomorrow morning, he said quietly. Vienne thought that perhaps he'd translated his intention poorly. Pardon? Madame de Champlain should not be here tomorrow, he repeated. My husband and I own this house, Rachel said. Why should I leave? It will not matter, this ownership of the house, not tomorrow. My children, Beck finally looked at Rachel. Your children are of no concern to us. They were born in France. They are not on the list. List. A word that was feared now. Vienne said quietly, What are you telling us? I am telling you that if she is here tomorrow, she will not be here the day after. If she were my friend, I would find a way to hide her for a day. Only for a day? Vienne asked, studying him closely. That is all I came to say, madams, and I should not have done it. I would be punished if word got out. Please. If you are questioned about this later, do not mention my visit. He clicked his heels together, pivoted, and walked away. Rachel looked at Vienne. They had heard rumors of roundups in Paris, women and children being deported, but no one believed it. How could they? The claims were crazy, impossible. Tens of thousands of people taken from their homes in the middle of the night by the French police, and all at once, it couldn't be true. Do you trust him? Vienne considered the question. She surprised herself by saying, Yes. So what do I do? Take your children to the free zone tonight. Vienne couldn't believe she was thinking it, let alone saying it. Last week, Madame Durant tried to cross the frontier, and she was shot and her children deported. Vienne would say the same thing in Rachel's place. It was one thing for a woman to run by herself. It was another thing to risk your children's lives. But what if they were risking their lives by staying here? You're right, it's too dangerous, but I think you should do as Beck advises. Hide. It is only for a day. Then perhaps we will know more. Where? Isabel prepared for this, and I thought she was a fool. She sighed. There's a cellar in the barn. You know that if you're caught hiding me, Vienne said sharply. She didn't want to hear it said aloud. Punishable by death. I know. I can't even celebrate that my prediction about Beck being an ally, it has been sort of proven correct so far, it seems. Because this could still very much be a setup of seeing how Vienne reacts to this kind of information.
But it's one of those, we know Beck has more information than he's sharing, and this is as far as he's willing to risk.
I do want to mention that because of this part of the book, I had to have a conversation with Bree, who had recommended the book, and I told her where I was at. And I needed her to tell me a few things to help me decide if I'm going to continue reading this book or not, because it gets really heavy really fast. And this was one of the things that I needed clarification on, because if this was some kind of trick that he did, or if he wasn't doing this to be an ally, I don't think I would be able to continue reading the book, to be perfectly honest. And so I'm sorry for spoiling it for everyone, but I have to say this now. He is trying to protect Vienne and Rachel. He is risking his career, and probably more than that, quite honestly, to help them. And he is not doing it as a test, according to Bree.
But it's also one of those, if he knew about it, why is he only helping this one person? I feel he's only helping Rachel because he fancies Vienne in some way.
Yeah. I'm not saying that he's a good guy.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, he is not the monster that he could be.
Yeah.
So while I was mildly excited about the fact that I was right, he doesn't like what's going on, and he's also having his little act of rebellion, but I'm like, this is very little, very late, Beck. Come on, dude. So again, just sorry for having to spoil it that Beck is trying to help and that this isn't some ulterior motive, but honestly, I am having a hard time finding things to look forward to in this book, which I think is probably the point. And not having to question Beck's intentions anymore makes this a little bit easier for me to get through, and it makes me want to continue reading, knowing that I don't really have to worry about him as much anymore. So Rachel and Vienne discuss for a while what they should do, and they decide that Rachel and her children would try to get into the free zone with false papers because they felt that it was potentially putting fewer people at risk, and it was the safer of the two options of either staying and hiding and potentially being found or running.
So Are they hiding for the night and then going?
No, they're leaving that night.
Okay.
Vienne slipped a sleeping draught into Sophie's lemonade and put the child to bed early. Not the sort of thing that made one feel like a good mother, but neither was it all right to take Sophie with them tonight, or to let her waken alone. Bad choices. That was all that there were anymore. At just past 6 o'clock, she dressed in her old gardening overalls and went downstairs. She found Beck sitting on her divan, an oil lamp lit beside him. He was holding a small framed portrait of his family, his wife, and his children. At her arrival, he looked up but didn't stand. Vienne didn't know quite what to do. She wanted him to be invisible right now, tucked behind the closed door of his room, someone she could completely discount. And yet, he had risked his career to help Rachel. How could she ignore that? Bad things are happening, madame. Impossible things. I trained to be a soldier, to fight for my country and make my family proud. It was an honorable choice. What will be thought of us upon our return? What will be thought of me? She sat down beside him. I'm worried about what Antoine will think of me too. I should not have given you that list of names. I should have been more frugal with my money. I should have worked harder to keep my job. Perhaps I should have listened to Isabel more. You should not blame yourself. I'm sure your husband would agree. We men are perhaps too quick to reach for our guns. He turned slightly, his gaze taking in her attire. She was dressed in her overalls, and a black sweater. A black scarf covered her hair. She looked like a housewife version of a spy. It is dangerous for her to run, he said. And to stay, apparently. And there it is. A terrible dilemma. Which is more dangerous, I wonder, Vienne said. She expected no answer, and was surprised when he said, staying, I think. Vienne nodded. You should not go, he said. I can't let her go alone. Beck considered that. Finally, he nodded. You know the land of Monsieur Fret, where the cows are raised? There's a cattle trail behind the barn. It leads to the least manned of the checkpoints. It is a long walk, but one should make it to the checkpoint before curfew. If someone were wondering about that. Not that I know anyone who is. My father, Julien Rossignol, lives in Paris, at 57 Avenue de la Bourdonnais. If I didn't come home one day, I would see that your daughter made it to Paris. He rose, taking the picture with him. I am to bed, madame. She stood beside him. I am afraid to trust you. I would be more afraid not to. They were closer now, ringed together by the meager light. Are you a good man, Herr Captain? I used to think so, madam. Thank you, she said. Do not thank me yet, madam. He left her alone with the light and returned to his room, closing the door firmly behind him. So Vienne waited until the designated time and met up with Rachel, who managed to get false papers, which under fairly short notice is pretty impressive.
Very short notice.
But she paid for them with her wedding ring. And then she packed up all of her things in a wheelbarrow, and they set off into the night. Vienne, Rachel, and Rachel's children, Sarah and Ari. Oh, and fair warning, it's about to get really heavy, and I don't think I can make it through this part without crying, just so you know.
Okay.
They crossed the dirt road and pushed their way through the field of hay toward the copse of trees in the distance. Once in the spindly forest, Vienne felt safer, protected somewhat. By the time they arrived at the Fret property, night had fallen. They found the cattle trail that led into the deeper woods, where thick, ropey roots veined the dry ground, causing Rachel to have to push the wheelbarrow hard to keep it moving. Time and time again, it thumped over some root and clattered back down. Ari whimpered in his sleep and greedily sucked his thumb. Vienne could feel the sweat running down her back. Oh, I have been in need of exercise, Rachel said, breathing heavily. And I love a good walk through the woods, Vienne answered. What about you, Mademoiselle Sarah? What do you find lovely about our adventure? I'm not wearing that stupid star, Sarah said. How come Sophie isn't with us? She loves the woods. Remember the scavenger hunts we used to have? She found everything first. Through a break in the trees up ahead, Vienne saw a flashing light, and then the black and white markings of the border crossing. The gate was illuminated by lights so bright, only the enemy would dare to use them, or be able to afford to. A German guard stood by, his rifle glinting silver in the unnatural light. There was a small line of people waiting to pass through. Approval would only be granted if the paperwork was in order. If Rachel's false papers didn't work, she and the children would be arrested. It was real suddenly. Vienne came to a stop. She would have to watch it all from here. I'll write if I can, Rachel said. Vienne's throat tightened. Even if the best happened, she might not hear from her friend for years, or ever. In this new world, there was no certain way to keep in touch with those you loved. Don't give me that look, Rachel said. We will be together again in no time, drinking champagne and dancing to that jazz music you love. Vienne wiped tears from her eyes. You know I won't be seen with you in public when you're dancing. Sarah tugged at her sleeve. Tell Sophie I said goodbye. Vienne knelt down and hugged Sarah. She could have held on forever. Instead, she let go. She started to reach for Rachel, but her friend backed away. If I hug you, I'll cry. And I can't cry. Vienne's arms dropped heavily to her side. Rachel reached down for the wheelbarrow. She and her children left the protection of the trees and joined the queue of people at the checkpoint. A man on a bicycle pedaled through and kept going, and then an old woman pushing a flower cart was waved on. Rachel was almost to the front of the queue when a whistle shrieked and someone yelled in German. The guard turned his machine gun on the crowd and opened fire. Tiny red bursts peppered the dark. Rat-a-tat-tat. A woman screamed as the man beside her crumpled to the ground. The queue instantly dispersed. People ran in all directions. It happened so fast Vienne couldn't react. She saw Rachel and Sarah running toward her, back to the trees, Sarah in front, Rachel in the back with the wheelbarrow. "Here!" Vienne cried out, her voice lost in the spatter of gunfire. Sarah dropped to her knees in the grass. "Sarah!" Rachel cried. Vienne swooped forward and pulled Sarah into her arms. She carried her into the woods and laid her on the ground, unbuttoning her coat. The girl's chest was riddled with bullet holes. Blood bubbled up, spilling over, oozing. Vienne wrenched off her shawl and pressed it to the wounds. "How is she?" Rachel asked, coming to a breathless stop beside her. "Is that blood?" Rachel crumpled to the grass beside her daughter. In the wheelbarrow, Ari started to scream. Lights flashed at the checkpoint. Soldiers gathered together. Dogs started barking. "We have to go, Rachel," Vienne said. "Now!" She clambered to her feet in the blood-slit grass and took Ari out of the wheelbarrow, shoving him at Rachel, who seemed not to understand. Vienne threw everything out of the wheelbarrow. And as carefully as she could, she placed Sarah in the rusted metal with Ari's blanket behind her head. Clutching the handles in her bloody hands, she began pushing. Vienne shoved the wheelbarrow forward, over the ropey roots and dirt. Her heart was pounding, and fear was a sour taste in her mouth, but she didn't stop or look back. She knew that Rachel was behind her. Ari was screaming, and if anyone else was following them, she didn't want to know. As they neared Les Jardins, Vienne struggled to push the heavy wheelbarrow through the gully alongside the road and up the hill to the barn. When she finally stopped, the wheelbarrow thumped down to the ground, and Sarah moaned in pain. Rachel put Ari down, then lifted Sarah out of the wheelbarrow and gently placed her on the grass. Ari wailed and held his arms out to be held. Rachel knelt beside Sarah and saw the terrible devastation of Sarah's chest. She looked up at Vienne, gave her a look of such pain and loss that Vienne couldn't breathe. Then Rachel looked down again and placed a hand on her daughter's pale cheek. Sarah lifted her head. "Did we make it across the frontier?" Blood bubbled up from her colorless lips, slid down her chin. "We did," Rachel said. "We did. We are all safe now. I was brave," Sarah said. "Wasn't I?" "We," Rachel said brokenly. "So brave." "I'm cold," Sarah murmured. She shivered, drew in a shuddering breath, exhaled slowly. "We are going to have some candy now, and a macaron. I love you, Sarah. And Papa loves you. You are our star." Rachel's voice broke. She was crying now. "You are our heart. You know that?" Sarah's eyes fluttered shut. She drew a last shuddering breath and went still. Her lips parted, but no breath slipped past them. Vienne knelt down beside Sarah. She felt for a pulse and found none. The silence turned sour, thick. All Vienne could think about was the sound of this child's laughter, and how empty the world would be without it. She knew about death, about the grief that ripped you apart and left you broken forever. She couldn't imagine how Rachel was still breathing. If this was any other time, Vienne would sit down beside Rachel, take her hand and let her cry, or hold her, or talk, or say nothing. Whatever Rachel needed, Vienne would have moved heaven and earth to provide. She couldn't do that now. It was another terrible blow in all of this. They couldn't even take the time to grieve. Vienne needed to be strong for Rachel. "We need to bury her," Vienne said as gently as she could. "She hates the dark. My maman will be with her." And yours. You and Ari need to go into the cellar. Hide. I'll take care of Sarah. How? Vienne knew Rachel wasn't asking how to hide in the barn. She was asking how to live after a loss like this. How to pick up one child and let the other one go. How to keep breathing after you whisper goodbye. I can't leave her. You have to. For Ari. Vienne got slowly to her feet, waiting. Rachel drew in a breath, as clattery as broken glass, and leaned forward to kiss Sarah's cheek. I will always love you, she whispered. At last, Rachel rose. She reached down for Ari, took him in his arms, and held him so tightly that he started to cry again. Vienne reached for Rachel's hand and led her friend into the barn and to the cellar. I will come get you as soon as it's safe. Safe, Rachel said dully, staring back through the open barn door. That's where I want to stop.
I don't know where I thought that was going.
Not there.
Definitely not there.
So this is why I keep saying that I don't know if I can finish this, because Bree says it gets worse. And I'm like, I know that there were atrocious things that happened during the Holocaust, but it is really hard to imagine that there's much worse than, what would she be now, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old getting shot?
For seemingly no reason.
Yeah. And I understand that children died in the Holocaust. Like, I get that. And children die in war all the time. But, like, the fact that this story wasn't about Sarah. Sarah, so far, has felt like a very, very much like a side character. As in, like, she's mentioned every time that they go over to Rachel's house.
Mm-hmm.
Because Sophie plays with Sarah. Like, that's just the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And her loss is still devastating. I don't know if I have anything that I can say, really. I don't know if I can continue to read more descriptions about children dying, or honestly anyone dying. I know more people die in this book, obviously, but again, I did have to get some answers from Bree to help me decide if I'm going to keep reading. And I told you about this last night after we stopped recording, but I told her where I'm at in the book, and she said that this wasn't what she was expecting me to talk to her about when I said that, because she had warned me that I was going to be like bawling my eyes out and everything like that, and this wasn't what she was talking about, that I was going to be bawling my eyes out for. So that to me says that there's something worse coming, but I don't know, because here is the thing, I don't know what makes Bree cry as compared to what makes me cry, because it's possible that the reason why she felt like something worse happened later on in the book is because it was maybe to a character that we've gotten to know and like really start to like. I would guess that's probably what it is. But yeah, this is why I'm really on the fence on whether or not I want to continue this book, because that really scares me that there's something else coming. Because, like, the thing is that, like, on the big picture is terrible. But we know the big picture. We have the hindsight.
But it's almost worse to zoom in.
Exactly. Because we don't know the details of, like, the individual people. And when we start learning the details of the individual people, that's where we're getting surprised by things like this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Where can people find us?
People can find us on Instagram.
At A Pot of Sass.
They can find us on Facebook.
At A Pot of Sass and Sarcasm.
You can send us an email.
apotofsass@gmail.com.
You can check out our Patreon.
patreon.com/apotofsassandSarcasm, and donate if you're feeling so inclined to pay for my therapy bills after this. Don't forget to rate, review, share. It really helps us out. I don't know if you really want to be sharing this one, though. This particular episode, you might want to take some time out of your day. If you're listening to this at the start of your day, don't. It's going to wreck your whole day.
Now that the episode's over, you shouldn't have done that.
Here's the thing. I can put this at the beginning. Well, thank you so much for listening and sticking through this. We hope you keep listening.
Stay sassy.
Just as sassy as Sarah not having to wear that stupid star on her adventure.
That stupid star.